So we are here in Pollard, Arkansas at our farm, and spring has really sprung. This tree particularly is a Swiss limber twig, and you can see we've got some blooms that are completely opened up. We've got some that are still yet to open. We've already kind of got a couple of little videos, and you can see a bee right here or two kind of working the blooms. Um, and we're just going to kind of take you for a walk, kind of show you some different things that we have. A lot of what I've spoken about before is that we keep a lot of antique varieties or heritage varieties that you don't really necessarily see in a store. This particular planting in our orchard is going to be predominantly limber twig varieties. This one is not necessarily a good depiction of the limber twig that you'll see, and I'll show you that with some of them as we go up the hill. They are known for flavor, but the actual term limber twig comes from the actual way that the branches will droop. It makes it very difficult to have a central leader whenever you prune your tree, because everything kind of wants to fall. They have very spindly kind of branches, and the weight of the apples will pull them towards the ground, almost like a willow tree to a certain effect. Okay, and we'll just kind of start walking, and as we get to each one, we'll kind of talk to you about them a little bit more. As we come up the hill, you can see we've kind of got our drive path over here, and that will lead into one of the first issues that you'll see, because we actually have two apples here. I know one of them is red limber twig and one of them is levering limber twig, but I don't necessarily remember for sure which one is which. My dad thinks the opposite basically of what I think. What we have here is a Rocky River limber twig, and you're getting a little bit more of that kind of droopy aspect. You can kind of see where the whole tree is wanting to kind of grow over towards this direction, but it's blooming this year. Won't make many apples, but we'll get to try it, and as it continues to get larger, we'll be able to bring these to market as well, maybe in another year, maybe two. Chances are we'll have a small amount before too long, but it'll take a little bit before we get very many. This is what I believe to be red limber twig, and it is a really good example. You can see the branches are very thin. The whole tree is coming over. What will happen is, where these are such droopy branches, when it sets fruit, it will pull it down towards the ground. And you'll see that with all of these, and eventually it will have a very willowy type kind of growth habit. A lot of these limber twigs originated in the Appalachians, between North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, maybe even up into Virginia, West Virginia area. And they were kind of swapped around just through local orchards that people had grown throughout the years. Lee Calhoun, in his book, The Old Southern Apples, is where I got a lot of my ideas for apples I wanted to grow. This particular apple tree down here is unique to us. We questioned if it could be Arkansas Globe. That was a variety that originated in Arkansas, and it's known to be a large yellow apple that produces very, very large blooms. I don't know if I can get these down to where you can see, but these blooms are actually much, much larger than what you would see on any of our others. You can't see it as much. They're kind of starting to cup up, but if you were to push it out, you can see it's actually a very large apple blossom. It is a tip bearer, and it was found in an old orchard in Arizona, and we got scion wood delivered to us just to see if maybe it's going to match up to some of the old descriptions of Arkansas Globe. But for right now, it's just a mystery. We can't say for sure one way or the other. I do know there is an apple that is similar that's called yellow bellflower. I don't know if yellow bellflower is a tip bearer or if it is a spurring variety. If it is a spurring variety, then that strengthens my idea that this could be Arkansas Globe, being as it matches a lot of the characteristics. Moving on, we have several more limber twigs. If you'll look through here, we have fall limber twig. The middle one by the road here is called Delstein. That is a cross between Red Delicious and Gravenstein. It originated in an orchard here in Arkansas. I got that from the USDA Grain Service, which is a genetics repository for the United States, and I believe Cornell is where they keep them. And I had anything that they had that was an Arkansas originating variety sent to us several years back. The next one over is Virginia limber twig. It's a very late apple. It's got a good blend of sweet and tart. We got to sample it for the first time 2 years ago. It didn't make any apples last year, but if you'll look, we may walk down there to it. You can see it is just starting to bud out. It's one of the things you'll run into whenever you're having multiple different varieties, is they won't all bloom at the exact same time period. When you have as many apples as what we do, it's good to have a crabapple variety every so often, if for nothing other than for pollination. But if you'll look, you'll see the pink little blossoms are just really getting going on this tree. I don't think anything has opened up completely, but it's been, out of some of them we've been trying, it's been one that I've been very happy with. Ripens into November. So especially for a home orchard, if you're looking for apples that will last you throughout a growing season, this is a good option. As we come back up the hill, you will see other different limber twigs that we have. You can see this particular variety's got a little bit of that growth habit. We have a little apple over tree over here called Golden Nugget. It was just recently planted. Believe it or not, it wasn't that many years ago that this whole area was just a small pond. It didn't hold water all year. So we ended up busting the dam out, which was probably about right here. And then we're turning that into more apple growth. And Golden Nugget is kind of a smaller russeted apple, I believe, that has a sweet flavor. So we've already talked about apples so far that we have that are from, anywhere from Kentucky to Tennessee to Arkansas. I'm sure we have some, I know we have some that are from Missouri, but I don't believe on this side just yet. But this particular apple is called Carter's Blue. It is a red apple with a pretty heavy bloom that gives it a little bit of a blue tint whenever you look at it. It's blooming for its first time this year, so we may get a little bit of a sample on it. It originated in, I believe, Montgomery, Alabama, around the 1840s, and it has been propagated and transferred back and forth. And I believe it was brought back to the United States through a kind of a DNA germplasm project through the UK. I think they originally had some apples purchased from Georgia from a nursery and delivered to France in the late early 1900s. From there, some of those scions were sent to England, and then from there, they actually had those imported back to America so that we could get some of these varieties that have been extinct, to this region of the country for some time. So it is an interesting one that I'm looking forward to trying. Walking back over here, we have there's not a lot of literature that I can find on this particular apple, but it is a limber twig that originated in the state of Arkansas, from around the Fayetteville, Springdale area. It is called mammoth limber twig. And the only thing that I've been able to find is there is an old plate that shows where it originated. And you can find that on the USDA website if you ever look up apple plates. And we found it in an orchard and ordered scion wood and grafted it. And it looks like this will be the first year we'll get to try this particular variety. And we'll be bringing it back home to its home state. If you look across the way, I talked about different crab apples and things that can help with, your pollination. The far apple tree here in this row of 1, 2, 3 is actually a curd crab apple, which is for pollination. If you follow it forward, you'll actually find Shenandoah, not Shenandoah. I'm sorry, one last time. It is a yellow apple that originated out of Arkansas, and it is called Shannon Pippin. That's not a very common variety. It looks like it's going to fruit for its first time this year. As we come up the hill, we will see we're starting to get into some different pear varieties we have. This is a variety called Dixie Delight that I got from the Wildlife Group. I did get several of their pears, and it does look like we're going to have a decent pear crop for the first time off of it. Having a complete crop loss for all of our pears last year. They say this one has a pretty good high flavor. It doesn't make a very large pear, but it is good to eat. This is McKelvey. It's what I would call an old sandstone pear. It's got a very sweet flavor to it. It's a hard pear, and it's got sand cells in it. And I just described that as you will find pieces in the fruit that resemble sand. Um, they are good to preserve. We use it for pear honey. I know some people will even go as far as to can the fruit, as far as in halves or quarters, however you would like to do it, with or without the skin. Look it up. I don't give definitely any advice on canning things yourself. I just know people do it. As we come on up, you'll find this is an older version of a pear tree called Warren. I think we're going to get a few pears off of it, but even though it bloomed, I didn't get a lot. Whenever you look, I may be missing some, but if you look, I can see a cluster there, and I can see a cluster here. As far as if you look right in here, there's a few that are going to set. Not all of them, I don't even believe, are going to make fruits, but we'll get to try it, and hopefully that means that with it starting to bloom, we'll be getting more and more pears off of this variety as well. This is a variety called T.S. Hardy, which is supposed to make pretty much resistant to late freezes, temperature extremes, and this year it did well for us. Again, the only year I've ever had a complete pear loss was last year, and it didn't make anything, but it is making up for it this year. If you look up through the trees, there's just pears everywhere, and they make a large pear. Again, I'd compare it to the old sandstone and cut fruits. They do a good job, but they're not your European style pears. This is a variety that I purchased. It is called Sundance. You can see a little bee on it as it's starting to open up. Makes a yellow apple, ripens late October. It's got a very tart flavor to it. I think it's a pretty good blend of, mild sweetness, but I tend to prefer an apple that has a little bit more tart to it as opposed to something that's just sweet. Personally, though, we do grow some that, such as honey, I think it's called honey sweet, that is got no real tartness to it. And we have those available just at different times based on whenever the trees are ripening. We've been growing a lot of varieties this year, or grafting a lot of varieties this year that are early so that we can extend our growing season, hopefully from June, July even, through November, which typically our big harvest season is September to October. So this is a variety called Arkansas Sweet. It was originally thought to be extinct, but it was found growing in, I believe, in a guy's backyard in either Illinois or Indiana, somewhere in one of those kind of northern states. And you can actually see when I'm talking about the USDA plates, this book actually talks about the USDA watercolor collection. And you can get online and actually look up even more than what's available just for this book, but you'll actually see Arkansas Sweet demonstrated in this particular book. And we actually do grow this apple. It ripens for us kind of late September, early October. It does have a sweet flavor to it, in my opinion. Some years sweeter than others for one reason or the other. This apple is Horse, which is exactly spelled like it sounds, Horse. Makes a very tart apple. First time I ever tried this apple, it made my jaws lock up because it was so tart. We use it predominantly in jellies and apple butter, and it's phenomenal for that. In fact, I would say it's one of my favorite apple varieties to make apple jelly out of, the other being Golden Russet. As we come down the hill, you will see a lot more different varieties of apples that we grow. This is an old variety called Hawkeye, which is the kind of the original version of Red Delicious. I do think it has better flavor than the Red Delicious you'll find at the store. It does have more of a striped color than that kind of brilliant, bright, thick, waxy red skin that you see now. A lot of those were just sports or mutations that they would find growing in an orchard of nothing but Red Delicious. And then they would select for that kind of appearance. And over time, that's how you eventually develop the Red Delicious that you see now. This is a crab apple, which is again for pollination on our right here. And it is a variety called Wixon. Has a very, very high sugar ratio. I've seen it listed anywhere between 20 and even as high as like 24 bricks on a sugar scale. I think a lot of people like to use it in cider just because of the higher alcohol content that you will get if you let it ripen up. They are sweet, almost like candy right off the tree. This is another old Arkansas variety called Caulfield Beauty. Um, and I believe I have another plate in this book of this particular variety. Yeah, here it is. Has pretty impeccable flavor in my opinion. The reason it's, I think, not grown more commercially or never was is if you look in this kind of plate here, you will see it has like little kind of gross, I don't want to use the term wart, but that's kind of what it resembles. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't affect the flavor. There's nothing wrong with the apple, but anything that is considered a blemish pretty much gets eliminated from mass production. Um, but again, personally, I kind of find these older varieties to have better flavor than what you find in the store. And this one is kind of very open and spread out, and you can actually see a lot of bees working these blooms. So I'm going to guess this is a variety that right now is producing a lot of pollen and nectar. Ready? This particular variety is called Ashmead's Kernel. And I say it that way because it is a UK apple, and it's from one of my favorite orchardists. Well, not favorite as far as he didn't invent it, but the person that introduced me to this variety on YouTube was actually a guy named Stephen Hayes. He is a doctor in the UK. You can actually look up his YouTube videos. He doesn't post as much anymore, but he has some great videos on keeping apple trees and nurserymanship as far as grafting. Probably one of the best at the saddle graft that I've ever seen. It's nothing that I even try to do myself. We're typically will do whip and tongue or cleft graft, or my favorite personally is T-Bud. But he will really brag about this particular apple as far as a high flavor apple. It is a russeted variety. Last year we got a pretty good crop off of it, and I personally would agree they are very good apples. I understand that they can be prone to water core, but I haven't seen it personally yet, though it's only been fruiting for us for a couple of years. Moving on, you will see an apple from Mississippi, which is right here, called Collie. Makes a very large, kind of green with a red blush apple, which is fairly disease resistant for us. It does not take many of these apples to make a pie. Moving up, another apple that I'm fond of, Roxbury Russet. It's one of the very first apple varieties that originated in the United States as far as named varieties. Moving past that, you'll see Ginger Gold, which is an offshoot of the Golden Delicious. To its right is an apple called Ozark Gold, which came out of a breeding program, I believe from the University of Missouri, for sure a school in Missouri. As we move on, you will see we've cleaned out a lot of black locusts to make room for more apple trees, and we've piled those up, typically in washes. If you kind of pay attention to the way that the hillside goes, these are areas where we have lost some of our soil, and hopefully as those rot down, that will make new soil, and we will be able to plant apple trees in that place in the future. This is Pristine. It is a newer apple, but to me it almost tastes like Jolly Ranchers, almost like a kind of candy. It's an interesting one. It's early. I don't think it's a great keeper, but it's definitely worth having if you want a unique flavor apple. As we move along, we'll come into some more apples that have originated in both Arkansas, as well as some more limber twig varieties. Doula's Beauty is thought to possibly be the seedling of a limber twig. It was grown by a guy with the last name Doula, and it was his fastest growing rootstock. And he kept it without grafting it just because it was growing so strongly, and it became a pretty good flavorful apple. And he went ahead and named it Doula's Beauty after himself. That is actually not what this tree is. This tree is called Newtown Pippin. It was grown by Thomas Jefferson at Monticello, along with Hughes crabapple, which we have over here as well. And Hughes was used more as a cider variety. Newtown Pippin was considered a high-flavored eating apple, and in fact was so popular, as I recall, that the Queen of England actually lifted the import tax off of this particular apple so that they could get more of them imported from the States. And I do believe it is one of them, yep, right here, that I have a picture of in our plate book. And we got to try it for the first time last year, and I would agree. It's got a very good, sweet, kind of tart blend. It grows pretty well in our soil. I believe I've read it typically will do better on a sandier soil, which is what we have planted here. Moving on, I believe Doula's Beauty may be the one we have here at the bottom of the hill. This particular tree is Doula's Beauty that we talked about earlier. You can see the blooms are just getting ready to open up. And I'll bring you a picture of this one. It makes a dark maroon, almost purple apple. In my experience, you can actually find pictures of our most recent harvest from this apple on our Facebook page. Moving up, we'll have, I believe, white limber twig and black limber twig. You'll also start to find some apples that originate in Arkansas, as far as Springdale, Black Ben Davis, Mammoth black twig, and this apple here that you can see blooming to my left is the Hughes crab apple, which again was a fairly popular cider apple in its time. We have another cider apple at the top of the hill that's name escapes me for whatever reason right now. It'll come to me in a second. This apple is one that I always wanted to grow. It's called Virginia Beauty. The late Tim Hensley used to have a nursery called Old VA Apples in Virginia, and he really gave high marks to this apple. And it does have, I would say again, exceptional flavor. It's kind of almost got at times a little bit of a hint of cherry almost to it. Especially when fully ripe, you'll see it has this kind of russeted crown, and it kind of hallmark is typically it will have one of these kind of russeted spots on the side. You'll see in almost every apple. I think that's one of the reasons it never really made it to a more commercial use. But as far as for like a home orchard or at a market, these are again apples that I think have much better flavor than probably anything that you'll find in a store. As we move back along the top of our orchard towards our shop, this is the cider apple that I don't know why I cannot recall the name. I was hoping maybe I would see a tag on it. Many people say it is a variety that you can get a single varietal cider off of. It was thought to be extinct, but I believe they found it in New Jersey. I can remember pretty much everything about this apple other than its name. It makes a small kind of yellow apple, has very high amount of juice in the apple, so it's good to press. Maybe I'll remember it and I'll put it in the comments. This apple is called King David, originated in Arkansas. A little bit of a fire blight kind of trouble at times, but definitely still worth it. Exceptional flavor. Makes a very pretty red apple. Moving right along, you will see over here in the corner is an apple called Springdale, which I believe is another one that we have a picture of in our plate book. It's not a large apple, but it does make one that, for us anyway, happens to have a pretty decent flavor. I've got mixed reviews from other folks as far as their success with it, but in our apple orchard, it makes a pretty tasty apple. And you can see it here. And that's kind of going to give you a little bit of a tour. Some of these other kind of greener trees that you see are pear trees. Again, we have pear trees not just here on this side, but over on the other side. That's where our Toll apples, you'll find those over in that portion of the orchard. We may find time to get over there today. We may not. We'll see. We've got to do some things with the bees as well. But I wanted to kind of give everybody an idea of some of the apples that we grow and kind of show you a little bit about what we have going here, so that whenever you may see us at the market, at either Paragould or Jonesboro, you'll kind of get an idea of where your apples are being grown. So if you have any questions, you can always leave them in the comments. Follow us on Facebook, like, comment, subscribe on our YouTube page, and hopefully we will see you at the market this coming year.